Yeah. I was hopeful that it was.
Turn it on till it was about 65-7. I thought, okay.
Turn it off when they hit 60 or.
All right, it's water and sewer meeting, January the 10th. What is on a pen? So, the agenda item, I'd like to add one item for discussion. We can put it, make it under item 3, phase 1A, number C. And this is just a general discussion, and this is something that Dylan asked me to do. You put it on the agenda, just talk about damages caused on properties that didn't have easements, but as part of the travel, getting to a particular residence that did need some work done for the horizontal boring. Kind of a summary of just covering easement debt or covering property damages going to easements. With that, I'll make a motion that we approve the agenda as amended.
I'll second. I'll second it.
Any other comments? All in favor, signify by saying aye.
Aye.
And a copy of the December 13th minutes. Make a motion to that.
Make a motion to approve. I'll second.
All in favor, signify by saying aye. Aye. All right. Stop construction status. Joe, you wanna?
Yeah, I
Oh, memo?
did put together a little bit of memo, or Jeff put that memo together. We send that to the PCA in the city every month. And it does a good job of very briefly talking about what the contractor is up to and what's been accomplished and what we're looking ahead at. In fact, we did have a progress meeting with the contractor today at 10 o'clock. A couple of you guys were able to attend. And, the contractor continues to make progress. They did take a couple weeks off around Christmas with some rough weather and of course the holidays that they're a little less productive. So they did take some time off, but they've been kind of making steady progress. Doing a lot of work inside, but a little bit of work outside. Some of the work they're doing outside, they are assembling the domes for the tanks. The south tank, I think the dome is actually scheduled to be picked and installed tomorrow morning. And the other one is being assembled as well. Other work outside, they're doing a little bit of concrete work, or they have done a little bit of concrete work outside associated with the vaults around the SPR. But they haven't been doing that a lot very recently because of cold weather and snow. They're in fact probably looking at waiting to do any more outside concrete work till it warms up and we get rid of some snow. They've completed the brickwork on the outside of the admin building. And then miscellaneous piping improvements, mechanical, electrical improvements within the structure, the buildings themselves. Won't get into great detail, but there's some good pictures and a little bit of commentary within that memo that people have questions. We can talk about, but let you just kind of look at that as you get the opportunity to. We do have a pay request for Staub this month. It's about $528,000, which is less than half of what they have been averaging on a monthly basis, which essentially is a function of, the weather and the holidays and the time off that they've taken. They do continue to make good progress. Again, we had that progress meeting today and they continue to be on schedule. We've kind of talked about the fact that the instruments and controls and some of the mechanical items are always of concern on these projects, and a lot of that material is coming in, and a lot of the instruments and controls are scheduled to start coming in March. So that continues to place us essentially on schedule for the project. No, it's still hard to know exactly when things are going to come in, but contractors are reasonably optimistic that we're not going to have any big delays or issues getting things. So I think that continues to be positive. Any questions on construction or the pay request, or what's kind of coming up with the contractor here? We'll take a look at that memo we put together, and if you have questions, let me know. We talked about change order number 2 last month. Embarrassingly enough, there was a math error in change order 2. If you remember, there was 8 items in the change order. The 8th item wasn't summed on the spreadsheet. It happens that the 8th item was a deduct, so the change order actually decreases by $4,140, but we will present that again to the council for approval with the spreadsheet calculating all 8 items. So that change order is decreased to $31,800. So I guess that's a positive, even though it was a little embarrassing that we missed that. But we did, contractor caught it when it went to final signature, so that's good. We've talked a little bit about the gas extension to the gas and electric extension to the wastewater treatment facility. The electric is at the facility. People still hasn't set the transformer, but we believe they'll be doing that soon. The gas item was the item that we talked about being more concerned. After the council meeting later in December, we had a bit more correspondence with the gas company. I've asked them to take a look at both the north route in that extending gas from Hunter Street to the wastewater treatment facility. And then also provided them with some easement documents and information about how People's Co-op is extending electric service south through what will be the future right-of-way and the easement that we acquired for the Forest Main extension from Orinoco Estates, and then all the way to 85th Street. So I've asked them to take a look at that, and I gave them a potential corridor that the gas could potentially go in. They indicated that, it would take a little bit of time once the calendar turns here in 2023 for them to initiate their feasibility report and get back to us. I'm assuming that they're doing that. I haven't really got a response. I indicated that, I didn't think that what was initially proposed was equitable. And respectfully asked that they look at other alternatives. So we'll see what they come back with. I also have initiated the process to look at what it would take to install propane tanks and not have gas there. Essentially, if you remember, the gas issue is that the first one that needs service gets to pay for all of the main, which is BS in my opinion. So maybe we should let somebody else be first, if that's the way it is.
What's the only demand for heating? Is it just like unit heaters and stuff, or is there part of the process?
No process. So it's basically heat, hot water and heat. And so I think there's
heat demands in pre-treatment are probably pretty big, because it's a once through system. You take outdoor air, you heat it up and blow it through the building and you exhaust.
Oh, that's 100% OA.
Yeah,
Oh, that is a big consumer.
yeah.
So
That up fast.
I have asked the mechanical engineer to look at that, in terms of. There's a gas-fired furnace, a water heater, and a unit heater. Converting them from gas to propane is a matter of changing out an orifice. He's still looking into or working with the manufacturer of the 4 makeup air units and seeing if that requires a burner replacement or if it's simply an orifice modification. So we'll sort that out, but he's also contacted some suppliers. And we'll essentially cost that option too.
I think more important is gonna be the operating cost, annual fuel estimates. The conversion is probably peanuts in the big picture.
Yeah, it's just Judd's.
Yeah.
So we'll assemble some of that information and be able to look at both avenues a little bit here.
You think you'll have something at the February meeting or March for sure?
That's what I would think. I would think February, but March for sure.
So to cover that cost, is that a funded study? Or is that?
All of
different
our-
Contingency?
You know, you're paying for engineering on an hourly basis essentially for construction services. And so when we look at these types of things, you get billed for it. No different than the inspector on the treatment site or reviewing shop drawings or those types of things. For the wastewater treatment facility, we're in pretty good shape with our engineering budget. We're at, or maybe even slightly below, where we kind of projected us to be. On the sanitary sewer collection conveyance side, we're pretty close to where we thought we'd be too. The only concern there is that we didn't project that the contractor would be working in January, February. And part of March. Typically you don't see that, but in this circumstance, Fitzgerald's behind a bit, and there are some green spaces that they can reasonably do work if we get decent weather. So the downside of that is it takes, we have to essentially manage that work and not manage it, but oversee it and do the staking. And, nothing's efficient this time of year in terms of having a survey crew out and trying to stake things, or even their operations are slower. So, from that perspective, that's probably going to hurt our budget. But we'll have to continue to monitor that and see where we're at.
So just wanted to comment, with this Minnesota Energy feasibility from 85th Street. Any discussion about who would pay for that? Did that come up in the conversation or?
They do the feasibility report. The gas company does.
Okay,
Minnesota Energy does it, and they basically give you an estimate of what it would cost. And I've asked for essentially estimates going north and south. Look at both options. And ask them to reconsider their cost split policy or whatever they're kind of proposing there to be a little bit more equitable. So, anything on the treatment facility you guys want to talk about?
How far is it from, where they had their, road constructors had their plant set up over there? They had gas piped in there,
Yeah, they did.
and the pipes are still there, sure. How far is it from there down?
That's a good question. So I do have some mapping here.
That gravel pit.
Oh, when they was making blacktop out there, that blacktop plant is not being used right now. Matthews bought that all out.
Oh, yeah, all right.
but the gas comes in from the other way right there.
Right.
And that's the gas fired, it was firing that with gas, natural gas.
Mhm. Yeah, I don't have much of a sense of where their infrastructure is.
Okay.
It's not that
Gas
far
company-
away.
The gas company would know.
They should know, and, you know, we
They-
met with them and talked about different routes rather than coming from Hunter Street,
Yeah.
which is, you know, a good mile. So if that option existed immediately east of the wastewater treatment plant site, and that was closer, then you know, I assume that if they could acquire the easements to bring it over, they would, but you know, just having a gas main kind of go across country and not having that within a right-of-way corridor creates problems when ultimately the land developed and, you know,
Just ask them.
yeah. Interesting thought. Contracts 2 and 3 on the collection conveyance side. The contractor is working. They started up, they did take a couple weeks off too with the holidays and cold weather. Today they started up with 3 crews. They got a crew in Memorial Park there by Tilly's, crew in Riverwood Hills, and a crew working, wrapping up the outfall line. Right now, the outfall line is about complete. They basically just got to tie 2 segments of pipe together. They've got some river restoration improvements that they've scheduled or plan to do in not restoration, stabilization improvements at the outfall location that they've scheduled for January. And then the other crews will continue to work in town. I think that there's plans that they'll start to extend the force main along the west side of Minnesota Avenue, and then also continue to do some work in Riverwood Hills Park area. There's that lift station 3 and some associated park piping in there. So they've got a fair amount of work ahead of them that they're planning to do. We did meet with them last Thursday, and they essentially laid out a schedule to complete the project on a month basis. And we asked them to put that mapping and information together and give us some sense of how they anticipated they would stage and approach the downtown work as it obviously affects Gold Rush. And so I think we've got a decent understanding of what they're proposing. They are taking an approach to kind of minimize work impacting Gold Rush with the exception of 4th Street. They are anticipating some work and some disturbance along that portion of the project. But really, that's the only portion of the project west of Minnesota Avenue in the downtown area that they'd be impacting prior to Gold Rush. So
West Center Street and East Center Street should be done
oh yeah, they're looking at doing that early.
in July, June, July.
So we do have some of that information that they shared with us. And I think that'll kind of remain fluid as construction progresses. I think we'll need to continue to push them to devote more manpower to the project to move that forward. I think that'll be important. They have a pay request. $232,682.94 is their pay request, and then of course that'll go to council.
One more time.
232,682.94.
That's number 11, right?
Yes, number 11. Anything that you guys can think of that we didn't touch on for Fitzgerald's stuff?
Hopefully the crews show up.
They have a
Enough
day to
crews show
day.
up, they can pull things ahead quicker and get done. We'll probably discuss that on a monthly basis. Joe was not there. Fogarty, who put the maps together, and so he's the one we really need to have a conversation with the next. Well, we're gonna meet
February.
February now, yeah. I'm gonna jump back and Larry, you can, so I pull up the satellite shot of where this it states, is that the spot or is that the spot for those that
That spot.
well, that's where the,
I think so, yeah. That's
About a
where
half
at the
mile.
pond, what's that?
It's about a half mile.
Oh, it's open that area, right next to
Yeah,
the pond.
Well, it's not a pond. That's where they used to mine. There might be water in it now, but I think that's where they used to mine. Isn't it, Larry?
Well, that's over across with that. You mean,
Here's the States, 85th Street.
They used to come in, unless it was here, but I thought. it
I
was
don't
there.
think there's anything there anymore, is there? They used to get.
It's
gravel
still
over
standing,
there.
it's,
I suppose it is. Maybe it's, I think it's there.
We're gonna circumvent all that environmental concerns.
Yeah, that's a war on. But, and they laid the whole thing, they laid the whole thing in one night. This is a super secret operation. Really, it's a documentary on YouTube, but it's really interesting.
Maybe it is there.
from there to
Four
there,
lines of-
there's just straight.
They pump fuel from the
West.
British Isle into inland Europe to fuel everything.
We don't have no idea what that service looks like or what the condition is or.
Condition, yeah.
It's got the double-sided duct tape, so it's okay.
Part of the marking up of the maps too were based off of the experience of what they did last summer. About how fast they did some streets and where there was set rock, no rock, and I think that contributed to marking up the plans, kind of giving them a better idea how long it might take, so. What they learned from last summer and fall, they've applied it to this year's map, so. At least we'd like to think they had that.
Right.
All right, anything else on Fitzgerald?
Item C, right?
Yeah, that was an. So if you wanna just touch base on your,
Yeah, so specifically, this deals with my experience, or what I'm familiar with is the boring underground, from, what is it, Garden Park area? To the south, to the Kurt Jenkins property. Yeah, thank you, Ryland. Right,
pressure line underground here.
yeah, and so, my understanding is, we got all the easements from Kurt Jenkins, but due to the way directional boring is done, I don't think it was any irresponsibility on the contractor's part, but I could be mistaken there. Most of the construction activity took place on the lot directly south. Which is my neighbor. And so he had a pretty significant excavation in his lot. And he gave verbal approval. The contractor said, hey, we're gonna be doing some work in your backyard, that day prior, I think. Didn't really explain the scope of what they would be doing or how long it would take. And he was home, but he was working. He couldn't, his explanation to me is he didn't really have time to deal with contractors at the time. So he said, yeah, I guess go ahead, whatever. And then the next day he had a great big hole in his backyard. So
In-ground pool.
yeah, and so, unexpected things can make folks a little upset. And I think, to a certain degree, that's to be expected. Really, the question is, you know, aside from just the contractor, their, commitment to put things back the way they were, if the homeowner has any other recourse or is there any other entitlement, based on the plan of what was supposed to happen, which was construction on the Jenkins property versus what actually happened, construction on Ryan Frank's property. And then we should also just diligence, make sure that the actual utilities are where we think, are where we planned them to be eventually, so that we have the right permanent access easements, but,
So a little perspective on that. The easements are all on Mr. Janning's property. There's a 20-foot permanent easement and a 10-foot temporary easement that run parallel to Mr. Janning's property line. It's all on Mr. Janning's property. And then a 20-foot easement and some temp easement going north that the directional drilling was housed in. And we put that on the plan. We show where the right of ways are, we show where the easements are. The contracts basically say the contractor needs to work within the right of way and easements provided. They contacted that property owner and got permission to be on that property outside the easements that we provided as a convenience to them. So could they have stayed within the easements? Yes, they would have had to change how they approached that a little bit. But yeah, they could have done a much better job of doing that, and they wouldn't have had to excavate, in my opinion, in that yard. But it was a quicker, easier way for them to approach it. I understand that. They chose to kind of drive around one of the mature trees in that permanent easement to try to save the tree. Well, the tree was marked for removal for a reason. One, so they could stay within the easement, and two, so that we wouldn't have an obstruction for maintenance. They should have taken the tree out. They're going to take that tree out. So the recourse for the property owner, they're on his property. I guess they got permission. They probably, based on my conversations with Mr. Frank, didn't explain really what was gonna happen. He didn't understand that. I think either Ellingson or Fitzgerald's guys did talk to him. And he was trying to probably be a nice guy, and I see how that would happen. He didn't understand what will happen or would happen. So, you know, I've encouraged the contractor to contact him and offer him something as compensation for the easement that they essentially provided him that facilitated their construction. And then they also have an obligation to restore what they disturbed. And so to date, they haven't moved on that. In fact, we talked about that last Thursday. You know, we can start to push that item harder. We could potentially hold some money back from payment until it's resolved. But from my perspective, it's really it's an issue between the contractor and the private property owner whom they contacted and got permission from. Do we want to get involved in that as part of, you know, from the city's perspective? Maybe. But it's kind of a gray area, frankly. And I've been hoping that the contractor would step up and do the right thing and solve this with the property owner.
I mean, in our contract with them, anything they disturb is supposed to be sent back to original. So now the only caveat to that is it's probably seed, not sod, right? And I'm sure this is grass area.
grass.
So
And they haven't really restored
you're
any.
not gonna
No.
put seed out now anyways. But you could, put, I guess, the dirt and level it off. It's a big hole.
The spring can be
Well,
done.
So you know.
Is it a
all-
safety concern? Like, does he
No,
have
no, no,
kids?
no. Well, I guess, you know, while the excavation was open, there was some of that, but, and just to, you know, for, transparency here. So again, he's my neighbor, my lot's right next to it to the, west and south. And where they were accessing is through the corner of my yard. And it was some pretty heavy trucks back and forth for a period of time. There will be ruts unless they somehow, alleviate the compaction and some other things, so.
And they shouldn't have been there. I mean, they should have used the easement. They should have removed the tree. They probably needed to do some grading within the easement to facilitate that truck movement. And they encroached on your property as well as your neighbors and, you know, they shouldn't have done that really. But they supposedly had permission.
You know, I can't speak for Ryan, but for my part. Nobody asked us and, I don't know, you're right, the grading at the entrance is pretty tough. I don't know that there was a practical way to regrade that without coming off of Janning's property. Maybe there is, I don't, but I don't,
From a
that's not
temporary
here nor there
standpoint,
right
you can
now.
do a lot of things to get that type of equipment. You know, it just costs money and it takes time. And contractors are, you know, they like to take the easy way out.
And so again, since I'm involved, I potentially could be, my wife's a little upset about the whole deal too. I'm not gonna express any resolution or what I think would occur. I can answer questions, but I won't try to direct a solution.
We're gonna need a little warmer, better weather in order to fix that situation up.
Well, definitely, and you know, there's still some construction that needs to occur back there. In fact, that's one of the items on their list is, you know, the two pipes have been drilled, but they're not connected. So there's some fittings to go to tie those pipe together as well as a valve to isolate that river crossing. And so right at that, you know, intersection of those two pipes, basically where the easement turns 90 degrees and goes north, there's gonna be another hole. Again, that should be within the easement. And that tree is gonna come out on Janning's property. You know, it's a nice pine tree, and I'm sure that they were kind of thinking we could save this by just driving around it. But that's really not what the city wants. I mean, we don't want a tree over our pipe, and we don't want access issues in the future there either. So the tree really, we paid for it, it's gotta come out.
Was Jennings compensated for that tree? So is that something we should, the next time, I think it's Matt from Ellingson, is that our construction meeting, talking about not staying in the easement and going on property, he had nothing that wasn't authorized or?
Well, I talk about it at the meeting too. We've brought it up at several meetings, and again, I've been hoping that the contractor would step up and do the right thing here.
And it was, I forget the name of the construction manager.
Matt Lawrence is the.
No, the Stantec. Jeff, yeah,
Could've been Jeff or Terry or.
yeah, no, Jeff, the guy who drives around in the white Denali. You know, he came out, and took a look at it and we're like, you know, they're not on the easement. They need to understand that but contractor behavior didn't change.
Well, it is on our list of items. We did talk about it Thursday. It's not going away. From my perspective, so, you know, I understand something needs to happen there. And we'll continue to push the contractor to not only clean up the area, but hopefully make it right with the property owners.
Is there any safety concern?
No, none of those.
A little bit more disturbance coming here, maybe for pretty soon. Before that excavation's done, and then of course the restoration can't happen until next spring.
So to connect these two things, they will be transporting an excavator into that area, but they'll be digging in the easement. They won't be digging in
Yeah,
Ryan's yard, or
correct.
it's just that travel across his corner without that, unless that tree comes out soon.
That is the plan.
Yep.
That was the plan previously as well, so,
Mhm.
you know, the contractor will do what they do. Right, but
Park your truck
Well,
right there.
The issue won't go away at emergency meetings, I guess, and you'll. I do agree, there's, in my opinion, I think there is some compensation due for Ryan. Or whatever that, if it's $300, $500, I don't know what that number is, but there's some compensation there. Plus, just redoing, fixing everything back to original condition too, so.
That's probably, that's undoubtedly a critical item too. They gotta do a good job of fixing what they just doing.
But thanks for sharing more background for the committee, and
yeah, maybe
the right place to
maybe
bring
there'll
it
be
to.
some similar situations. As we get into downtown, that I don't know what the easement and the boring is like, but
No, there undoubtedly are, or will be. I think one of the challenges with that drill is they drilled it from south to north. Or north to south, and it's just such a steep rise there coming up that. I think that just thought it was easier and less excavation to do it the way they did it. That's why they did it. Not what was intended.
Okay. We'll move on. Item 4, we. Something that, Joe was working on. Resident sewer, water service connection guide document.
Yep. Low pressure access easements, we did set that deadline of December 30th to have the. Permanent access easement and maintenance agreement signed. And we had 82 of the 84 property owners sign the agreement. And there are 2 property owners. I guess you can kind of see it on this one the best. You guys can't maybe see it, but this is the Methodist Church. You guys know where that is? Park's up here, the top of the hill, Carol Cowden Park. Here's the bridge, Minnesota Avenue. So this property owner chose not to sign. This property is essentially vacant. Nobody seems to live there and hasn't lived there for quite a bit of time. Kane's nodding his head. Years, but they do maintain the property from the perspective of there's activity there periodically, there's cars parked in that.
Isn't that
driveway.
that brick schoolhouse?
No, the brick schoolhouse is north and east on the other side of Minnesota Avenue, so. And then the other property owner here. She'd indicated that she just. Had some health issues and didn't want to deal with it. And we had quite a bit of correspondence trying to explain the situation to her, and ultimately both declined sign it. And don't want to talk about it anymore. So,
2 out of 84 is a win.
Yeah, that's pretty darn.
well, it's not bad.
Yeah.
We'd all like to see 84 out of 84, but and so now I've got to tell the contractor how many grinder stations to order. And so we were kind of looking at this, and one of the things, there's a couple variables, right? I mean, those two folks could come in tomorrow and say they want to sign the agreement. We don't know. But the deadline's come and gone. And there's also the fact that, you know, Orinoco Park, we don't have a grinder station going in there. We're directional drilling to a certain point. And then remember there was those archaeological findings north of that shelter. That kind of precluded us from installing that as part of the project
It's right up here.
and using the state and federal funds to fund that grinder station. Well, we could tell them to install it and work out a contract outside the contract and have them do it, but if I'm gonna do that, I gotta tell them to order the grinder station now. And if we just wanna forget about it for a while or, you know, punt on that, that's fine too. I'm just kind of saying I need to pick a number of grinder stations to have the contractor provide.
That number is 82 or 84
Or 83.
or 83 or
How much are these grinder stations?
Oh, $16,000-$17,000 for the residential ones. They're expensive. Installed, not just material, they're probably less than half of that or a third of that probably.
is it the muffin muncher? Brad?
No.
Is that those?
Well, they're E1,
Those are-
E1 pumps.
Those are like $14,000 just the grinder.
Yeah,
I mean, is it something if you just bought the all 84, but you installed 82 and the city keeps the other two for future phases, then we sell them?
yeah.
Somebody's gonna use them in the future.
Well, I think I'm little bit concerned about doing that with PFA and they're gonna say you bought 84 grinder stations,
Yeah,
where are the
84.
84 parcels that you know what I mean?
And part of that confirmation is the real property documentation. We have to show, I think Joe's got a map there. We gotta document where they all are at too.
Project doesn't include any funds for spare parts.
Yes. We do have some spare parts that the contractor provides.
My understanding is the grinder station pump, for example, is basically a replaceable unit in its entirety. So I think it's, you know, prudent to have at least that on the shelf.
But you don't need the structure itself, you know,
Oh,
there's
yeah.
components that you just
Yeah.
have.
Can have people sell their property the way it is without being hooked up?
Oh, that's
Or
the,
they,
Subject to the,
you know, they
County's ordinance, yeah.
stay in right, I mean, they can't sell it, can they?
not without bringing it into compliance.
right.
And I would bet $100 bill, neither one of those two parcels are compliant.
I would say just for consistency purposes, I mean, we had a resident in here not too long ago asking if they could be opted into the project and we said, sorry. It was a deadline and you missed it. I don't see any reason why we should take a different approach here. So to me, the only question is, do we put one in the park or not? Right now, we've got an economy of scale where we could do it cheaper than if we did it.
Not as part of the project.
Separate from the project, but the contractor's already mobilized, right?
Yeah.
You know, maybe it's $16,000 now, it might be $50,000 a year from now. So I think it's prudent to pursue that.
You know, maybe we buy 83 of them, and if one of those property owners comes in the door tomorrow and, you know, maybe it goes there, then I don't know, but.
I don't think so, honestly. I
It
think that
won't.
sets
I
a,
think the deadline come and gone, and it is what it is.
Yeah.
I don't disagree with that either.
So we're considering adding one at the park. Down to where that shower house is now to service that, yeah. So we'd buy 83 of them.
Assuming the contractor will do it on this, kind of on the
a separate invoice.
Right.
separate.
Field order.
No,
Oh, not field order
Yeah,
for the
separate.
contract. Separate.
If we did do the 83, that doesn't mean there's no It's not associated with the project being completed when we do it too. As far as installing the grinder station, we could have a local Jason do it for us too.
Well,
As far
yeah,
as-
I mean, they got kind of some specialized equipment that makes it.
I suppose we got 30 amp service there.
Yeah.
So,
And you've got to pay for it, you know, there's that cost.
Right.
Just the grinder station, you know, yeah, you know, there's. So that would have to come out of the parks budget or whatever. So
well,
things to think about, I don't know.
come out of our sewer utility fund too. Maybe.
Could. Or whatever.
We need to make a motion to recommend to council or anything like that, or?
That'd be helpful.
Yes.
Yeah.
So I'll make a motion that we recommend installation of a grinder station at Orinoco Park. Separate contract, but concurrent construction. Does that sound right?
Plus 82.
Plus the 82 out of the 80,
stations.
the 82 that have signed permanent easements.
The folks who didn't sign anything, I think, probably. The holdouts.
Whoever worked on those 82 though, that's good. I wouldn't plan on getting to 82 when we started, so.
I think like 75 maybe,
Yeah.
on a really good day.
The effort they put in paid off.
There's a lot of calls and trips and mailings and certified mailings and. You know, it really. Takes a deadline to make people. You know, here, just. Does.
You need a second to that?
Yes, we do.
Second it.
So I have motion recommend to council of installing a grinder station for Orinoco Park. Along with the 82 low pressure systems
That.
It's the usual explosions around here.
Good for your neighbor.
within the project schedule. Sounds good. Joe, take a look at it.
Really cold there, so. Oh, yeah. Really cold.
Any other comments? Seeing none, all those in favor signify by saying aye. Aye. Opposed. Approved.
So for the real property declaration, we have some pretty detailed mapping of the project and all of the easements and the right of way and the parcels receiving the low pressure. Sewer and. We Jim and Ryland and Kane and I looked at it today in terms of how some city-owned parcels are affected in this real property declaration and how that might impact those parcels. And so we're still working through that with the attorney, but the hope is that there are essentially 4 parcels that we've identified that we're hoping to prepare a legal description to kind of limit the declaration on these parcels so that the declaration doesn't encumber the entire parcel, it just encumbers the part of the parcel that's impacted by the utility improvement. Because there are some restrictions in terms of, you know, the city's ability to sell or modify that property in the future with that declaration. Basically, that declaration, based on my understanding, is the state's way of protecting their investment, you know, that they don't build a water tower and then somebody goes out and sells the land and, you know, it becomes somebody else's asset or value when the state invested in it. So I do have extra copies of this mapping. I was thinking about kind of going through and looking at those parcels, but we had a fair amount of time to look at them today. And I don't know if we need to do that with the committee. I'm welcome to do that if you want to take the time, but Ryland, I thought you for sure would want a map. I think Jim asked for one. I brought a few extra copies. If people want one, you're welcome to take it, and if not, I can dispose of them too. They're useful. So. Good. Yeah, I just have a few extra copies there as well, so.
That's your
Let's
copy,
see.
I think. Borrow it.
I think item C really kind of deals with the city's ordinance and the requirement for property owners to complete their sewer and water connection within a year of availability. And we've talked about that being a hardship potentially for some residents. And I think we just decided that we revisit this issue, or, you know, kind of let it percolate over the last month and see if there are any new thoughts or where we might want to go with that. The with the
Potential. Maybe there would be a, what did we call it for on the? What's the term that was used on the property tax assessment, a deferment?
there is a deferment on the assessments. One person, two people applied, one person was granted a deferment on the assessment
So the potential
Based
that,
on income.
yeah,
based on income.
if we wanted to offer a similar deferment process for the connection. That's what it would require. Okay.
Just because, you know, it's costly or can be costly.
Well,
So-
I still support some process for deferment. Consistent with what was done on easements.
So if we were to look at something like that, then the deferments, the application for that would be. We follow the same rules as far as median income. And we only have one person do the income deferment and. Seems like really. That might be the only person we had a deferment depending on what we put for guidelines.
Well, there could have been other people that would have qualified that just didn't apply. We don't know. Right? And you know, do you use 80% of the median income or do you use 100%? You know, you could look at that piece of the puzzle too.
At least what I thought I heard was that we just want more time from the public hearing because of the cost.
There was one property owner particularly
Right.
that expressed that
That one
viewpoint
lady.
strongly.
Yeah, I
Yes,
remember her saying that a couple of times.
yes.
I only have this amount of time, and then I think you had made a proposal to, what if we gave them two
Right.
construction seasons or something, if I recall correctly. That was the other option.
My thought was because the construction season would not be through the winter, so. If we look at our October date of people hooking up, then that's a pretty limited 1 month or 2 months. My thought was two working construction seasons implemented 1 March 2024 to 1 September 2025, which is 18 months. And that covers 2 construction seasons.
The only thing that I recall from that discussion last time is if we defer that, and everyone decides to defer, then the income, we lose income that we need to keep for the operating expenses, so that was gonna impact that, is that correct? If I remember from last month. Versus the deferment option, which you have to qualify for based on the same income that you threshold that you used previously. And now you're talking about a much smaller subset who could be impacted.
So in the case of the deferment, using that approach. And like in the case of the deferment for the cost, there's an outlet for getting it paid. Back when they sell the property, they cover that deferment, that would be. But whenever they sell that property or that person dies or wherever they're in the trading of the transferring of the property, then that assessment would be paid. So there's a vehicle for getting it paid using that process. I don't quite see that deferment process affecting how we would get the installation done. And the cost of that
Well,
installation.
That's not a debt that's owed to the city though.
Right, it's an
That's a
investment on private
owner's
property.
Cost only.
So I think that the incentive kicks in when you say that deferment doesn't apply. For example, if the property changes hands, then they have the ordinance kicks back in and that property owner, the new property owner has you know, a year to connect, and if they don't connect, then they start paying fees. And that's the incentive, right?
That was my understanding.
Or you can put a deadline on the, you know, the deferments for 5 years or 2 years or whatever, and then after that point, then you're not connected, then you're gonna start. The ordinance and the associated fees are gonna start to apply to you. Be applied against property.
What do we think? Will the county have an opinion? Or the state on the, you know, with the memorandum of understanding that we've got, anything else? Folks not hooking up once we've got a sewer system?
I think the PCA has a definite opinion. They invested $33 million in Orinoco and they expect people to connect. You know, whether that's
Would they
a
feel?
year or 2 years or 3 years, I don't think that they're gonna pick you apart for that. I think, you know, that's a local decision.
I think too, there is. Can't say it's a majority, but I do think there is a group of people that will hook up right away. Because they don't know the sewer system, they don't want to put the money into it and it's bad, you're waiting for it. And the same thing with water. There's probably a lot of people that don't talk about their water system that has gray water or they don't like it and they're anxious to get the water installed too. So there is some incentive from a personal basis for them to hook up. And the other issue with, I think that's what I kind of like about the September 2025, that's it's, in my opinion, I think it's very generous, 2 years. The water had 5 years and to hook up before we started connecting, but. And the other thing is just, if there are a lot of people that defer, then we're not getting our users. And at the same time, it's causing a lot of extra work administratively to take care of the deferments and follow them and track them, and then we probably have to have a deadline for when you have to submit your deferment. So then it could be a lot of work for administrative, that we're not getting any fees back for that. It's just they're getting paid to do the deferment, but there's no they're not being paid to do that work. It's related to a deferment.
I guess I just see the deferment as you're gonna have less people going forward. Cause you have to justify the income. So if you only had 2 people apply. I don't see us having hundreds of people applying. For hooking up, deferring for hooking up, for having prove your income with a threshold. Versus I do know people who are all like, my septic is just fine, I could defer hooking up and save myself some expense. I could see them doing that. So you'd have a lot more people, less users on the system.
For 1 year.
Yeah.
How many, in rough terms, how many folks are like in a boat like me where we're on a community system and so when we're hooked up, we're hooked up? Versus the individual parcels that are gonna have to be connected. Is it a 50-50? Is it?
Oh, really? There's that many.
There's-
Systems. Well,
There's about 220 individual septic systems. And you take the 82 off of that, then you're down to 137 of gravity.
So really, maybe it's even closer to 60-40 or 70-30 that will be connected on day one. Or thereabouts.
Within that first year or whatever, you know.
So that minimizes the impact of either one, really. You know, because even if everybody says, I'm gonna wait a year, well, it's only 30 to 40% of your users, which is significant, still gonna make the loan payment. But it's not 100%.
So what's gonna happen too, if we set a, well, I think it's gonna happen. Whether we do a September 2025 date or deferment. We run the risk of the city digging into our CIP money, the taxpayer supplied funds for operating costs too. By not getting the users that we had planned on initially for those first 2 years. So we're penalizing the taxpayer to supplement the deferments that signed up. Again, there's a deadline for the deferment too, so.
And there's different ways to structure the deferment. I mean, it could be forever until the situation changes. It could be deferred for 2 years, or 3 years, or 5 years.
But when they sell our property, you know, there should be
Well, yeah,
The
the
county.
county, yeah, the
Yeah,
county will make
that's-
sure of that.
then they have to hook up.
So there's different ways to do that.
Yeah, I don't know, I think that the deferment thing can get slippery pretty quickly. You know. And again, we had such few people apply for the other program that. You know, so the question is, how long do you want to defer?
Well, you give a blanket 2 years for everybody,
Right,
or do you, or 18 months, like 2
Right.
construction seasons,
right.
or do you target it? Based on an income process to only those folks who demonstrate a
What do
need.
we do with that church property over there, on that big vacant lot, that's gonna be hooked up? That where the pine trees are,
Well, nothing. I mean, there's nothing to do there. There's nothing to hook up.
yeah, but I mean, will they have to pay anything? Okay, not until they do something.
Not until they do something.
So I could ask Joe and Ross and Larry and Kane, you're part of those individual septic systems. What's your thoughts?
I'm gonna hook up right away. Day one, I will hook up. No brainer.
Yeah, we'll hook up. I mean, my system's relatively new, but. You know, get it done and move on. That's what I'm looking
Yeah,
at,
that's-
so. Spend the money and move on.
Yeah, I'm gonna hook up right away too.
What is, just curious, what does right away mean for you? I mean, is it late this year,
We might not be able to hook up till about October,
or is it?
and if the
spring?
weather gets bad, we might have a little problem getting hooked up then.
So as soon as the contractor can accommodate, basically.
Yeah.
Yeah, I have to redo, I want my sewer to come out the opposite corner of my house to do something there.
Yeah.
But,
I was just curious. What timing that, why is that meant, but okay,
yeah,
sorry.
so service will be available approximately October of 23. Yeah, and if we throw, I know we'd probably end up doing it in the spring then, you know, once the thaw was over. So spring of 24, I think we would probably go then.
So what do you hear your neighbors saying?
I ain't really heard.
My neighbor-
That's a big smile.
That's a whole nother discussion.
My neighbor's worried.
Except
he
your
won't be able to get a contractor. He keeps calling me, do you think I'm gonna be able to get a contractor? Well, I think my neighbor would hook up right away, but he's nervous, he won't find someone to do the work. That's his whole thing,
Hmm.
so I'm like, well. You can worry about that, but
Yeah, that's,
there'll be people here doing it, so.
I might be in a little bit of a bind because right now to go out and get around 8 or 10,000 to hook up would hurt us, but in about 4 years, the house is paid for. So we could get another loan then and no problem.
Mhm.
But if you're saying we gotta be hooked up in 18 months and I can't afford it for 36 months, that's gonna be a problem. And my well, we just stuck 9 grand into that 3 years ago. So I'm not in a real big hurry to get rid of that. It's gonna depend on neighbor down on the, the flats. The well's on his property, so. And I think, Joe, is this set up to bring up the water line and the sewer at the same time in the same trench?
For you?
Yeah, for me.
Well, yours, personal's right
There. Well, it's right here.
I think we talked on private property, that's pretty common, right, Joe?
Yeah,
Yeah.
you're in joint trench.
Okay. Then that'll help a little bit, but it's still a whole bunch of bucks.
Yeah, you have a parcel that it's a long way.
Yeah, it's a long way. And there is a gas line laying in there somewhere that we're gonna try and not hit,
Right.
but we do have to cross it. Unless you stayed on the other side of it when you came up.
Yeah.
Cause this one, it comes up like this and it swings pretty wide and comes in up here by the deck. And then our water and sewer all comes out right here, right? Those two are like 2 foot apart when they come out of the house. So, somehow or another, we're gonna have to get from this side of the line, depending on where you came. I don't know how that is laid. I don't remember that far back. Survey would be a lot more accurate in my memory. Cause when the gas company put that in, I just said, well, just go through the woods and do what you gotta do and bring it up here. So that's what they did. But it does swing wide where we're coming out in a different area. So depending on whether they have to cross it to get down there or not. And I think there's decent burial on that part. My telephone line's the biggest problem, and that's not gonna be affected. Cause fiber is supposed to go in this month. But I've got some telephone line that if you rake too hard, you dig it up.
Oh, no.
It's sitting on a rock.
We talked about maybe trying to see what funded grants and low interest loans would be available to property owners. Have we been able to make, say we, but I don't have.
I haven't made any progress on that. Sunny is supposed to be working on that too. I haven't heard anything from her. Do you have any update?
I eliminated I asked Peoples and they will fit at the USDA. I'm trying to make up with the Olmsted County Housing Director to see if there's any opportunities there for low interest loans.
So I think for the folks I'm talking about, it's more, it's not a timing issue so much as it's a financial hardship. Regardless of whether it's a year or 18 months or 2 years.
Yeah.
Some.
This map here don't go
low-income
good.
funding became available, we'd find a way to make it work.
where most of the other places.
I hate to. You finance the house, you know, it's a couple years, you paid for it.
Right here.
Probably a lot of people in your same situation too, right?
Yeah.
Refinancing.
There's all the people along West Center Street.
Well, that's right. Yeah.
Well, distance.
Sitting on this one here.
Ours is cut out the grinder station too. Yeah. Well, I don't maybe-
To that.
I don't know that we need to make a decision tonight, but I think we still need to pursue those kind of things. What funding opportunities are
Well,
available?
this is just.
Whether we go one way or the other, I think is
Going,
Yeah.
going
There's
in
a little
private
bit of
property,
time to figure it out.
except for the.
The opportunities are your best bet, because then, A, they hook up, and B, it takes the financial burden off.
I mean, here.
And that's those two things you want. You want people to hook up, and you want to
That's
help
just
them with the financial burden. So I think finding those other sources of funding might be the best route.
Let's keep keep this issue on the agenda.
Okay.
And, I don't think it'd be nice to have something in place by the spring, but I think residents would like to know that too. Now that we have an October date out there, I think we need to be prudent about getting something in front of them too, so. All right. Good discussion. I guess the last item is our wastewater operation. And I did email Sunny this afternoon. And she responded with she said contacts have been made, RFP, request for
Proposal.
What?
Proposal.
proposal. Try to make it confusing. In development, we'll keep you posted. So. and I don't know who if she's talked to both people service and also, PLA.
Oh, yeah.
PLA. I'm not sure who she contacted, but it's something I asked her this afternoon if she'd give us an update, and so that's her reply, so. But I'm hoping that Joe and then earlier, before Christmas, I just brought it to her attention about that we need to keep moving on it, and at the same time, whatever does come to the council, I'd like to have the city water and sewer committee take a look at the proposal too as well. And Joe for sure, from a technical perspective. And Haynes input as well, so
Definitely.
hopefully that will be or I should say, hopefully be a team effort going forward. And we did talk this morning about the 1 June date. Sounds like the controls, I think Joe had mentioned this earlier. Controls and everything is looking at that March, April timeframe, which is a good sign. So the 1 June is still a good date. Could be towards the end of June, but it's that June timeframes.
The proposals we get back from contract operators should include time spent, if we want them to be participating in startup. A lot of their plants, they just stop in for a couple hours a day and then they're gone. And so if we want somebody on site 8 hours or whatever a day for weeks at a time, that may not be included in their normal fee structure. So.
When we did, I'm pretty sure I mentioned it, and we talked about that at the December meeting. But they would like to have this commissioning person, a person that's gonna be involved with it, that relatively the majority of June for that whole commissioning, so it's not a come in on 1 July and away you go, but they're learning with us. Or with Stantec and the handoff of everything under control, so. 30 hours a week or 40 hours, but that is something that Staub would like to do with the people, so. That's for something else to add.
Yeah, I would think it'd be something less than 40 hours a week, but there's a
And
decent amount of time there. That's.
I guess the people we're hiring too, I guess they bring experience as well, so. Anything else? Tyson? Seeing none, I make a motion to approve or adjourn. 7:45.
Was I can second that?
Second, Russ. All in favor, say aye. Opposed? Thank you very much.
You know, one.
Or do you want it? Go ahead, if you want it, take it. I know, let's print another one.
It's only paper.
Only paper.
Very
This
easy.
will be in the packet.
Huh?
This will be in the council
It'll
packet.
be in the council packet, yeah.
Sticking it to the man.
Why is that? No.
Thanks, Paul.
Keep it cool. Keep clearing that off.
No, I-
Brush get the phone so high and then they have to come clean.
Right.
And last time it was great. We're gonna remember skid loader. He can just park away up here and come slide right back down. It's steep enough, but there's no way. I think they could drill that into, you know.
Potentially. There rock there?
Well, there's rock in there.
Grinder station discussion for Arnold Park.
On the side of the
Be a
hill.
fair
and
rescue fund plan.
If they couldn't, do it, because I don't think.
Be used for that.
solid rock to the-
Improvement, upgrading. You know, we're using stuff for the reservoir, the mixer, the inspection,
Unless we.
updated
Paper rock.
updated controls, that'd be a way to fund that
I did own that.
side
Yeah.
contract with Ellingson or Fitzgerald. It's gonna be drilled in, it's gonna be drilled in from forestry.
Or forestry.
Inch and a half lines or something. Inch and a quarter, yeah, inch and a quarter residential, so it'll get drilled in and towards where the septic tank
Yeah.
is. And then they're gonna set that grinder station and we'll connect to it in the future. That would be something that we could just have Jason Ottman do, find the existing tank and make that connection to the grinder station. Have our electrician get wire to the grinder station.
Where we have to decommission that septic tank,
Yep,
holding tank.
yep, we'd have it pumped and we'd collapse it.
Oh, okay.
Anyway.
So we call our septic guy, Gopher, he'd come out, pump it,
Mhm.
make sure no one's using the facility. Right? The timing part of this, right? And
Clean job.
You got the line open, it's not pleasant.
pump it, collapse it, fill it in. And have Jason find that old pipe
Really.
and reroute a new pipe to the grinder station. Good to go.
Well, I think that's worthy of a non-financial estimate.
Yeah.
Did I say that right?
I was just thinking about those rescue funds. Were you gonna
Oh,
use
no,
them?
I meant getting an estimate from Jason.
Oh, yeah. I think it'd be minimal.
What do you think, Joe?
Thank you for making properties.
And it's gonna be half the cost or better doing it when everybody's mobilized and you're getting volume discount from the vendor and.
Yeah, having Ellingson drill that towards Arnold Park is gonna be minimal. Even us having Jason set the grinder. I think it'll be fairly reasonable for us to make that. I really do.
Yeah, if you can find the money, it'd be good.
Possibly using the American Rescue Plan funds that we have. Infrastructure.
We all know it's never gonna get cheaper and it does probably need to be done, so.
Forgot to bring that up. Are we holding one more?
Have
Have a good night.
Yeah.
Good night, guys.
Pine Island today.
Oh, yeah. I'll talk to you later, Joe. Thank you.
Okay.
Last night, we had a funeral. We was talking about the cost, because they're putting it all together. It's been. The groups of them like 80